protect the European free trade areas, in which case it's something that the Europeans want. Why are they making it an issue for the UK? As Boris Johnson has already said, he will not put a border in Ireland. Well, there's something wrong with the logic here. On the one hand, they're saying we won't give you a deal unless you put the thing in place. If we don't do a deal, they've got no leverage, and we don't put it in place. I don't get it. Please help me.
Yeah, well, Peter, I was very struck by this, that if we leave on no deal, all sides, including the Taoiseach, say there'll be no hard border, and yet if we leave with a deal, there has to be a backstop. Lord Adonis, what do you make of that?
Well, Peter said that is it to protect Europe or is it to protect us? Well, it's to protect us collectively, because us includes Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, of course, is a fully integral part of the United Kingdom, and rightly so. And the big issue in Ireland is if you have different trade, tariff and immigration rules between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which would flow from a no-deal Brexit, because by definition we then have tariffs, trade differences and no freedom of movement, then it doesn't matter who is the first mover in setting up a border. There will have to be a border, because otherwise people will be breaking the law by crossing without paying customs duties, filling in forms, and indeed as people, individuals, they'd be breaching the law by moving at all. And that's the reason for the backstop, to see that in that case existing arrangements continue, and that's why Theresa May agreed it. It's why the government agreed it at large, because it was under advice from the police service of Northern Ireland that there'd be a real threat to public safety if that didn't happen, and that's why it's obviously the right thing for it to continue. Are you convinced, Peter?
Thank you. I understand that bit, and obviously a border has got two issues, both sides of the border. Clearly, that's logic. Boris Johnson has said categorically he will not put a border in place. If you're saying that there has to be a border by somebody, so, to use your words, the first one to move, I suppose, are you seriously considering that the Europeans would put a border in Ireland with European flags flying over the checkpoint? I don't think so.
No, but that's not the point. The point isn't whether there's fixed infrastructure. The point is there will be different rules and laws governing both sides of that border. And therefore it doesn't matter whether there's fixed infrastructure. People will have to fill in customs forms. They'll have to get visas and permits to travel. And it's that we need to avoid. Now, of course, the one could lead to the other. The fact that you've got to have customs forms, duties, visas and so on could lead in due course to there being fixed infrastructure. But of course, you don't want to start down that road at all.
Andrew, there's no need for a hard border. Peter, there's no need for a hard border. Customs declarations can be done online, and checks on quality of products. Well, remember that right now we're fully aligned with EU rules, and actually those checks could be done at destination points as opposed to border crossing points. Peter, I'm amazed that Monsieur Barnier says this morning they're not prepared to compromise. Does that surprise you too?
It sounds like he's digging himself into a corner here, because if we refuse, point blank, which Boris, maybe stage management, it might be playing to the gallery, it could be all those things, but on face value he said he will not put a border there. Well, if the EU are still insisting on something, it would seem to me incumbent upon the EU to get on with it. Well, that I do not see.
Yeah, but Peter, you've got. Boris Johnson has form for saying one thing and doing another. I can assure you, as a parliamentarian in Britain, that as soon as you start getting mass illegal immigration across that border, trucks full of people from Central and Eastern Europe who are being smuggled into the UK illegally across that border because there are no checks, the first person who will be out there saying that there should be checks will be, yes, you guessed it, Boris Johnson. So the right thing to do is not to create the conditions where you need a border in the first place. That's why we should have the backstop. It's also, frankly, why we shouldn't be leaving the European Union in the first place.
We should be leaving the European Union full stop.
Peter, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. I'm going to ask you, Andrew, Bob in Chiswick says, ask Andrew, how does he expect to bring the country back together again if he wants to revoke Article 50? Does he think 17.4 million people will go back into their box?
Well, I only want to see Article 50 revoked after a referendum. And that's how we bring the country back together again. Everyone has their say. All those people who voted leave or remain, it doesn't matter how they voted 3 years ago, they all get their say. But of course, we can now see what the consequences are going to be of the Brexit deal or no deal on offer, which wasn't the case 3 years ago because, of course, there had been no negotiations whatever.
If they vote to leave by an even bigger margin, which I guess they would, what then? Would you then respect the result or not?
Well, of course, I'm a Democrat, so of course I'd respect the result. But I think given particularly what's happening with the younger generation who are overwhelmingly against Brexit, they don't want their future trashed. I think this time we'd see that there's a majority for staying.
Well, looking at the opinion polls this morning, the percentage that want to remain now is about 40%. But hey, we're going to continue with this. For now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it is 10:15.
This is LBC.
Before my clients sign, I'll direct your attention to the special conditions in the contract. The player requests that not only do the club provide him with a cake on his birthday, but that they will provide him with a cake on any other player.
Some people think they're so special, but with the daily jackpot at Paddy Power Games, an average jackpot of £21,000 is guaranteed to be won by 11 p.m. every day. So don't think you're special if you win it.
Cleaning lady's birthday.
Paddy Power Games. Jackpots must be awarded by 11 p.m. and vary from day to day. Jackpot is shared with other operators. Available on selected games. T's and C's at paddypower.com. 18 plus begambleaware.org.
Grandma will never find her purse here. I know, more mud.
You can't control what your grandchildren get up to. But if you temporarily misplace your Visa debit card, you can freeze and unfreeze it on our mobile banking app. Feel in control every day. Lloyds Bank, by your side. You can only freeze some transaction types. T's and C's apply.
Beat the holiday blues. Go all-inclusive with Royal Caribbean and cruise from just $8.99 per person. Sip top-class cocktails and soak up the sun as you sail to the hottest spots in Europe. Book next year's adventure with deposits from just £25 per person. Go online or visit your travel agent. This is how to holiday. Price subject to availability. Eligible staterooms on selected 2020 sailings. Please drink responsibly. Book by 30th of September. Conditions apply. At or protected.
Dad, where's Madagascar?
Isn't it on the DVD shelf?
I meant the island.
Ah.
Free inside every copy of this weekend's Mail on Sunday. Don't miss your giant glossy map of the world. Perfect for back to school and for those who left some time ago. Superb giant map of the world. Free inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
My mum can't remember my first steps. She can't remember walking me to my first day at school or watching me walk down the aisle. She doesn't even remember I'm her daughter. But I do. That's why I'm walking the Alzheimer's Society Memory Walk for my mum. Join me to help defeat dementia. Sign up at memorywalk.org.uk. Who will you walk for? memorywalk.org.uk.
Ooh, you look so pale and jaded.
Walls need warming up for autumn. Get to B&Q. Good Home 5-litre standard coloured emulsion is just £18. With our wide range of contemporary colours, you're bound to find the perfect shade to make your home feel snug. You can do it when you B&Q it.
Have you ever lost money on an investment? If a high street bank persuaded you to buy a stocks and shares ISA, unit trust or investment bond and you lost money, Goodwin Barrett can help you get back thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you don't have the investment anymore or the paperwork, Goodwin Barrett make it easy to find out. Text GOOD to 60777. That's GOOD to 60777. You don't need a claims management company to make a complaint, and if unsuccessful, you can refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
I'm Joel Bellord on this morning, and he is taking your questions on all things Brexit. Let's go to Jay, who's calling from Cambridge. Good morning, Jay.
Hello there, Nigel. How are you?
I'm, struggling, but there we are.
He's losing his voice.
So I'm losing my voice, which is not good. Which is not good.
I think it's great. It's the run up to the election.
Well, mind you, we could say, couldn't we, that the people have spoken already? But hey, Jay,
have spoken.
Well, that's what I thought.
I'd like to know, because Lord and Honest, clearly you have all the answers. I'd just like to know that this whole prorogative government media spin that's been going on the past 7 days. I'd just like to know exactly what the answer is for the 4-day period that you'll come up with that you haven't managed to come up with over the past 3 years. I'm just interested to know what you've been withholding is going to be revealed in those 4 days.
Sorry, I don't understand your point. What do you mean about the 4 days?
The proroguing of Parliament is not for 5 weeks. It was being closed down for the conference season anyway. All Boris Johnson has done by calling, for a new Queen's speech, is 4 days of parliamentary business are being missed. And what Jay's saying is, you've had 3 years to debate.
Oh, I see. Well, it's not us, of course. It's the government that says it's trying to get a new deal, isn't it, Jay? I mean, Boris Johnson came in and said that the last deal he wasn't prepared to accept, which is the reason why he got rid of Theresa May and put himself in. And now he's done that. He says he needs a new deal. Well, there's been no new deal so far. Indeed, Chancellor Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, said yesterday that no new proposals had yet been put to her at all. So obviously it's important for the maintenance of our democracy that Parliament sits all the way through the next 5 weeks, so that we can have reports from Boris Johnson as what's going on. And the 4 days is wrong as well, because it was within the decision of Parliament itself whether to adjourn for those weeks of what's called the conference recess. And the first thing that was going to happen tomorrow in Parliament, in Tuesday on Parliament, as Boris Johnson knew, was a move to cancel the recess so that we could do our job. But because of this thing called the prorogation, that's not legally possible.
Sorry to interrupt, but speaking of doing your job, why did everyone decide to go on holiday over the past few weeks? Why did they not sit in government then?
I didn't want to go on holiday. It was the government that sent us on holiday.
It seems like every single politician who was on your side didn't want to go on holiday, but reluctantly went on holiday. It seems unusual, but that's the case.
That's not correct. We all opposed having this long summer recess. It was the government that insisted on it and got its majority to support it. I would have been perfectly happy to have sat all the way through the summer. I think that would have been right, given the crisis that we're in. We're there as your servants, Jay, and we should be there.
New Labour weren't going to give up their time in Tuscany, Andrew, were they?
Look, Nigel, you're the one who's abroad at the moment. I don't get to go on these, very grand trips to Washington at weddings and so on. So if I were you, I wouldn't throw stones.
No. We know what happened. Jay, they could easily have sat during the summer. They didn't want to. I'm going to stay in Cambridgeshire and speak to Lee, who's a new caller. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Nigel. Morning, Andrew. I just wanted to ask, what I'm seeing in the press at the moment and on the TV is that we're dealing with some really substantial issues at the moment in terms of the proroguing of Parliament, and we're seeing a magic trick going on, for want of a better phrase. So every time we come to a serious issue, we dive down a rabbit hole, we get into serious details about small aspects of this, yet the fundamental problem we're facing is a constitutional crisis, because we have no real constitution on paper. Therefore, the Queen can't intervene in this issue, and she's not done that. Yet Parliament is also being pushed out of the door, and I just feel that that's a huge crisis in democracy. I just wonder what your views were.
I agree with that, and I think also, if you're looking at the reason why Brexit is happening, I think, let's be fair about it, part of the reason why it's happening is people are very unhappy with the way this country is governed, and that's not just about our relations with Europe, it's about how Westminster works itself, and the fact in particular that we have such a centralised system of government, so that almost all decisions are taken in London and in Westminster, whereas in most countries of our size, I mean, Nigel's in the United States at the moment. The United States is a federation. It has states which big powers are devolved to. It's not the case that all the decisions are taken in Washington, D.C., and I think there's a revolt taking place against our system of government. And what's happened in the last week, where it turns out that 3 Privy Councillors, all of whom are ministers, can advise the Queen to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks. I mean, let's be frank, that's straight out of the Middle Ages.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem with the whole situation, is that we're facing some substantial issues on our constitution and the way our Parliament and our democracy operates, yet we keep diving down into small aspects of a withdrawal agreement. And that, for me, is a real letdown. Whether I'm Remain or I'm a Brexit person supporter, I just don't get that aspect of it, how something so substantial can be just glossed over and almost like an illusion. Don't worry about it.
This is the biggest constitutional debate we've had for centuries. I agree with you. And Andrew, you talk about the Middle Ages. What really does reflect the Middle Ages, of course, is the House of Lords, which is now full of hundreds of Tony Blair and David Cameron's friends. Isn't it time to get rid of the House of Lords?
Yes. Yes, I think we can agree on that. I don't defend the current House of Lords at all. What I want to see is a federal second chamber, like the one they have in the United States with the Senate, and Germany, which also has a federal second chamber that brings together the nations and regions of the United Kingdom with representatives of their own assemblies and with direct elections. And I don't think there's any place in Parliament now for appointed people like me, or indeed, Nigel, if you were appointed, you. I mean, what we should do is have a proper democratic second chamber.
So should we go for a Senate?
I'd be all in favour of a Senate. Yes, something like the United States. You've got to decide how you represent England in it, because, of course, the difference between Britain and the United States is we have one very dominant nation in terms of population, which is England. So you couldn't just have the four parts of the UK having an equal status as you do in the Senate in the US. But I think the principle of having an elected second chamber which represents the nations and regions of the UK is an idea whose time has come. And whether Brexit happens or not, I think that should take place.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's long overdue. And you're right, of course, because England, and people don't realise this, is 86% of the population of the United Kingdom. Let's keep your questions coming. Let's go to Phil in Farnham. Good morning, Phil.
Hello. Lord Adonis wants a second referendum. I'd like to ask him why he thinks there's still a case for that when the leader of the Liberal Democrats has single-handedly trashed the case for it by saying that she won't abide by the result in any case if it's leave again. What case is there now?
Well, I'm not a Liberal Democrat, and I don't speak for the leader of the Liberal Democrats. I said to Nigel Farage a moment ago that, of course, I'll respect the result of a second referendum. The key point now is that 3.5 years have elapsed since the last referendum, and we can see what the score is. We know what the consequences will be of leaving without a deal and with any deal. So I think the right thing to do is, the democratic thing is to hold a referendum and then to abide by the result.
Even if you would be allying yourself with a party that won't abide by the result of it if it's leave again, I find that fantastic, to be honest.
Well, I don't agree with her on that, and I don't think it's the right thing to play fast and loose with democracy in our country. I certainly wouldn't want to do that.
Well, some people do, apparently.
Phil, I was astonished when I heard the Lib Dem leader say that, but hey, Phil, thank you. And can we ask you, Andrew Adonis, what party are you now?
I'm Labour, and I've been Labour for 25 years, Nigel. I haven't changed my parties in the way you have over the last year. Mind you, you've found new ones, don't you, as your way of moving parties, which is quite ingenious, actually.
Well, it's been rather successful. And are you sticking with the Labour Party come what may, or do you see the prospect of a Remain alliance coming together where there will be an electoral pact with the Lib Dems, the Greens, Plaid, the SNP?
Well, I think it depends what the terms are of the election. If Boris Johnson wants to call an election with the proposal before the British people being no deal, and there's even talk this morning about him saying he won't obey the law if the law is changed next week by Parliament to say that there can't be no deal. If something like that happens, then of course we have a national emergency, and I think the duty is of democratic parties then to come together. But of course I could put the same question to you, Nigel. You talked last week about a non-aggression pact with Boris Johnson. We're still not clear, because you ducked my question earlier. What do you mean by that? Do you mean that you might engage in a pact with him that means that you don't stand candidates? Or are you going to be standing 600 candidates against Boris Johnson?
Well, as you well know, the Brexit Party last week unveiled the fact they've got over 600 candidates, and we put 500 of them in one room. But if it comes to getting a clean break Brexit, of course we'd be happy to come to an accommodation.
And what would that be? Do you think that might be you're not standing candidates at all and backing Johnson in all his candidates?
That's pretty much impossible, because if you trust the Conservatives, they will always let you down, as we saw with Mrs May. Let's take one more caller before the break. Let's go to Paul in Salisbury, who's a new caller. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, just I'm wondering where the mandate comes from for voting for a no deal. Was that in the Labour's manifesto?
It wasn't in anyone's manifesto. No deal.
I think it was
That's
in the
reason.
Conservative manifesto.
No, it wasn't. No.
I think it was.
No. The Conservative manifesto said that they were seeking a deal. They weren't seeking no deal.
They were seeking a deal.
Yeah.
What was Labour's manifesto?
We were strongly against no deal and wanted.
That was in your manifesto.
Yeah. We said that we wanted to remain in the customs union and have a comprehensive agreement with the EU. Yeah, in our manifesto at the last election. Yeah.
Well, forgive me then.
But Theresa May did say in the last election, no deal is better than a bad deal. So you could argue that everyone that voted Conservative knew that no deal was a possibility.
Well, she recanted of that, didn't she? Because what she then said to Parliament in March was that no deal would be worse than her deal. And that's why in the key vote in March on whether or not to extend the negotiating period rather than have no deal, she backed extending the negotiating period. Indeed, she negotiated it herself. So I don't think, when you actually look at Theresa May's record, that what she actually did matches up to that very, very foolish slogan that she launched her premiership with.
But the Labour Party said they would respect the referendum result, and now the Labour Party wants a second referendum and says it will vote Remain.
But the referendum result wasn't for no deal, Nigel.
It was to
virtually no one. I don't think you said. You were talking about having an arrangement like Norway in the referendum campaign, weren't you? You never said that we should leave with no deal, did you?
I actually coined the phrase, no deal is better than a bad deal, and I used it clearly and consistently. And what about the 5 million Labour voters out there who voted Brexit, who now feel completely betrayed by your party?
Well, the reason why there should be a referendum is so that everyone in the Labour Party, in the Conservative Party, people who voted UKIP in the last election, however they voted, they all get to have their say in the crisis that we're in now. And that is the right thing for us to do as a democracy. Wow. I certainly don't think that we should be moving against the wishes of the people. We have to move with the wishes of the people, and that's why I think the case for a referendum now is overwhelming. And as people see the gridlock of Parliament and indeed Parliament being suspended unconstitutionally by Boris Johnson, I think most people are coming to that conclusion.
I think you might be very surprised by the result. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 10:30, time for the news with John Stratford.
The EU's chief Brexit negotiator has insisted the backstop won't be removed from the withdrawal agreement. Michel Barnier says it's the maximum flexibility Brussels can offer a non-member state. Ahead of an expected common showdown this week, Boris Johnson has told rebel Tory MPs they have to make the fundamental choice of siding with him or with Jeremy Corbyn. More than 20 people are believed to have been shot and 5 people have been killed after a gunman began firing randomly in the US state of Texas. Several police officers and a 17-month-old child are among those who've been injured. Passengers are facing long delays at UK airports due to a problem with air traffic control in France. Many people have reported their planes waiting on the tarmac for 2 hours while they await permission for takeoff. LBC weather, a mix of sunshine and showers, some heavy and thundery rain for northern and central areas of the UK, a high of 21 degrees.
LBC. Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
And I hear you. I've said I hear you, but I'm asking you to hear me as well about the political reality of that campaign.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is...
I know what you're saying.
37 people...
I know, you're just repeating what you've said, and I'm asking you to hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the reality was, when they activated Article 50...
Richard, thanks for your call. David in Henfield. Can you do conversation?
Sheila Fogarty.
With Blink, an Amazon company, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
For the ethical startups, for the caring community businesses, for the pioneers with a conscience. We know it's hard to be good in business. That's why the Cooperative Bank is offering new customers 30 months free everyday business banking. Search Cooperative Bank Business, where profits and principles go hand in hand. The Cooperative Bank, for people with purpose. Join us. New customers maintaining a credit balance of £1,000 plus, monthly limits for cash and cheque transactions. Other charges may apply, e.g. foreign and chaps payments, subject to status and eligibility. T&Cs apply.
Dad, where's Madagascar?
Isn't it on the DVD shelf?
I meant the island.
Ah. Free inside every copy of this weekend's Mail on Sunday. Don't miss your giant glossy map of the world. Perfect for back to school and for those who left some time ago. Superb giant map of the world. Free inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
Right, team. Any ideas on where we should advertise the launch of our new hybrid SUV?
How about talking to people while they're actually driving?
Beth, no one watches TV while they're driving.
I was thinking radio.
I knew that.
Research shows that advertising to people at relevant times, like while they're driving, can really boost results.
Great. So we're really motoring now, hey?
To find out more about advertising on LBC, text the word radio to 81156.
I'll never belong. I gotta be me.
This summer there's even more to sing about with the Skoda Summer Special, because now there's an extra £500 off list price on top of our existing finance offers across the Skoda range. Search Skoda Summer Special for more details. Exclude CityGo and all SE technology variants. Order and register by the 30th of September 2019. UK retail customers only. Offer not available with contract hire. See skoda.co.uk for more details. Finance subject to status. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. Skoda Financial Services.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have it or the paperwork, just text GOOD to 60777 to discover how much you could be owed. That's GOOD to 60777. You don't need a claims management company to make a complaint, and if unsuccessful, you can refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
So Parliament reassembles on Tuesday of this week, and I'm wondering, Lord Adonis, is this the moment for Jeremy Corbyn to bring forward a motion of no confidence in the government?
I don't think that's going to happen, because the first thing that's going to happen this week is bringing forward legislation, quite rightly, to stop no deal, because that would be undemocratic, and it looks as if there's going to be a broad coalition across the House of Commons for that. The big issue then is, will Boris Johnson obey the law? Now, the fact that we're even asking that question is extraordinary when you think about it, because Nigel, you and I were brought up thinking that governments do obey the law. Indeed, if governments don't obey the law, why can we expect anyone else to?
I also thought,
the ball will then be in Johnson's court.
I thought politicians would obey the result of elections too.
They do. And that's the reason why we've spent the last 3 years in a negotiation over Brexit, which it's just proved impossible to nail down. And so the situation which we now face, where we could have no deal, if Parliament says, on behalf of the people, that's not on, then of course we expect the government to obey the law. The only circumstances in which I can see a motion of confidence being carried against him at the moment is if Boris Johnson himself says he won't obey the law. And the fact that, as I say, we're asking this question is pretty extraordinary when you think about it.
Isn't the truth of it, Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't win that vote?
Well, I think he would win it if Boris Johnson had said he won't obey the law, and the law has been changed to see that we can't crash out of the EU without a deal, damaging people's jobs, livelihoods, ability to travel, and all that at the end of October.
And becoming independent, free, democratic, no foreign courts ruling over us, saving $39 billion, getting back our fishing grounds. There are some strong arguments for a clean Brexit too.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen, because the first thing that will happen if this no deal crash out happens is negotiations, because trade will have stalled, people won't be able to move freely and all of that. So that happens, you get your no deal on the 31st of October. The first thing that happens at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of November is negotiations start over a deal. So we might as well do it before rather than after.
Well, I think those negotiations have happened already. And indeed, my friends in the European Union tell me they are ready.
Have you got friends,
they are
Nigel,
ready
in the EU?
Absolutely. You'd be amazed. In fact,
I certainly
a growing number.
I thought you fled to America, because
a growing number of Eurosceptics all over Europe, of course. Andrew, do you think that if your side manage to force the government's arm to take away the negotiating position, surely Boris Johnson then just calls a general election?
I think he should. I agree with you. I think provided the law has been changed so that we're not going to see the country trashed during a general election campaign, because we're crashing out in the middle of one. Providing that happens, I think the right thing would be to have a general election. And as I say, then what's really interesting is what you're going to do, Nigel, because are you then going to, you've got a big war chest, I understand. You've got 600 candidates out there. Are you going to be fighting tooth and nail against Boris, or does this non-aggression pact that you've talked about mean that you're going to be, basically on his side?
I tell you what's clear. If there was a Leave alliance, they'd win the election by a very big majority.
Well, of course, there could be a Remain alliance, so we need to watch this space, don't we? But did I take you to be saying that there might be a Leave alliance?
I take you to say if there was a Leave alliance versus a Remain alliance, I know who the winners are. But let's keep the public questions going. Let's go to Sarah, who's calling from Taunton.
Hello, it's Sarah, actually.
Sarah, good morning.
Good morning. This is for Lord Adonis. It's a very basic question. The reason that you're so opposed to a no deal is there's no trade deal. And yet, we have no trade deal anyway. The withdrawal agreement is not a trade deal. So what's Labour's position on a trade deal? And why haven't you put your energy into actually coming up with one? rather than the things you've been doing for the last 3.5 years, which is blocking the government's ability to actually move on.
Well, thank you for that question, Sarah. Actually, what the withdrawal agreement says is that nothing changes for 2 to 3 years. So all of our trade is guaranteed because we remain full members of the single market and the customs union for this long period under the withdrawal agreement, during which a trade deal would be negotiated. And Labour's position has been very clear that the trade deal should be a continuation of the current European customs union and the European single market insofar as it's possible to have that outside the EU. So it's not the case that we haven't put forward a position. We've put forward a strong position. The problem is that Theresa May said, and Boris Johnson now also says, that they're not prepared to stay in the European customs union or the single market because they regard those as evil because they're somehow European. So the onus is on them to say what they would put in place, and indeed Nigel Farage to say what he would put in place of them, because anything which doesn't remove tariffs and allow free trade to take place is going to be very bad for this country and for people's jobs.
Are you convinced by that? Are you convinced by that answer?
No, I'm not, actually, because you know as well as I do that as soon as the withdrawal agreement was signed or ratified, which Labour refused to do, there would be an election. And in any case, the country needs to know what Labour's position on trade is. Or is this more to do with the fact you want to stay in the EU for political reasons? I think we have a right to know that.
Yeah, I just said, Sarah, what our policy is. It's to stay in the European Customs Union, to stay in the single market. And you're completely right that most of us in the Labour Party also want to stay in the European Union, but to do so after a referendum when people can see that the consequences for people's jobs, inward investment into the country,
clear,
and all of that is going to be very bad.
To be clear, on the point about trade, that would mean the Labour Party would not want to negotiate any new trade deals with any other part of the world. We would not have any ability to negotiate trade deals if Labour win the election.
Well, the best way of negotiating trade deals, which has been hugely successful for this country, is the European...
Just answer the question.
No, I'm in favour of negotiating trade deals. That's precisely what the European Union does.
Would the United
European
Kingdom...
Union has more than 50 trade deals with countries beyond the European Union. We wouldn't get those if we weren't in the EU.
Would the United Kingdom be negotiating trade deals if Labour win the election?
Yes, through the European Union,
which
is the right way of doing it.
Utterly dishonest answer.
That's absolutely the right way of doing it.
Dishonest answer in every way. Let's move to Belfast and speak to Ethna. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Lord Adonis, I know you've visited Northern Ireland many times and spoken to people and businesses and organisations and heard all our views about the backstop and the need to protect us from the consequences of Brexit. How will Labour continue to support the majority of the people in Northern Ireland who are opposed to Brexit and need the backstop if Brexit goes ahead?
Well, thank you, Evelyn. As you say, I've been to Northern Ireland several times. I've walked a part of the border. I've spoken to the border communities. It's absolutely essential that we don't have new border arrangements given the situation in Northern Ireland. And the right way of doing that is to rule out categorically no deal, and only, if I don't favour leaving the European Union, but if we do leave, only to leave with a deal that protects the Good Friday Agreement. And that is the debate that's taking place in Parliament this week, because people are very, very conscious of the fact that we don't want to turn the clock back in Northern Ireland. I'm only too well aware, having visited it, how precarious the peace process is even at the moment. And the idea of doing something to make the situation worse, I think, is unconscionable.
Well, thank you. We do appreciate your support, the majority of people. I know that is very clear here. So thank you for looking after us.
There we are, a satisfied customer there.
I'm going to come on this programme more often, Nigel.
Yeah, well, and what we're going to do, actually, I'm going to take one more call, and then after the break, we must talk about HS2, because the government have launched a review of the high-speed rail link. You're one of the great proponents of HS2. So
I was the architect, so I can't wait for that discussion.
So please get your calls in for after the break, 0345 6060 973. Before that, one last call on the EU and Brexit from John in Romford.
Hi there. Right, I was just ringing out the earlier caller who actually asked you about what the mandate for no deal was, which I don't think you really answered properly. A really interesting fact, if you actually look at the 2017 general election, if you add up the votes for all the parties who were explicitly against no deal, it comes to approximately 17.4 million people. So there's a mandate for you for people that are opposing no deal. The Tory manifesto said specifically it would deliver a deal, a good deal, and an orderly exit. The Labour one explicitly ruled out no deal. And I'll tell you what, the UKIP manifesto I've got in front of me here from 2015 says, following a vote to leave, we have two legal options. We repeal the European Communities Act 72 and leave immediately, or we activate Article 50 and notify the European Council that we've decided to leave in 2 years' time. The second option provides for a sensible, orderly exit, and this is the option we prefer.
John,
so there is no mandate for a no deal whatsoever.
John, you're completely right, and I think that's a question for Nigel.
Sorry, what year was that manifesto?
2015. The one before the referendum.
That was before the referendum. Look, I don't.
It doesn't matter then, because it's before the referendum.
Well, hang on. We said there are two different options. Everybody.
Yeah, and you said the second one was the preferable one.
Yeah, because
for an orderly exit.
Yeah, because John, for 25 years, I have campaigned for an alternative deal to EU membership.
So why not wait a few more months to get a proper exit that isn't going to leave us short of medicines?
John, honestly. Fuel, do you realise, John, fuel comes into this country by tanker from non-EU countries.
Sorry, it's not me saying this. This is Boris Johnson's government
and doesn't come through the port of Dover. So the fuel argument is utter rubbish. The medicines argument, I've spoken to the pharmaceutical industry. They've no concerns at all. John, for 25 years I wanted a free trade arrangement. We haven't gone for it. We've gone for a new European treaty, which arguably is worse than even being a member of the EU. That withdrawal agreement must not be reheated. It must not come back. You are listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 10:46.
In the UK, a police officer is assaulted every 20 minutes. After a spate of attacks, calls are now growing to arm our police with tasers.
The risks have now changed to police officers. We see that risk increasing every day. I am sick to death of writing reports and victim impact statements.
I'm Nick Ferrari, and I've come to New York to work with the NYPD and discover how their finest are protected.
He carries a combat tourniquet. He carries a Leatherman multi-tool. He carries his taser.
I go on a taser training course.
Repeat the word taser 3 times. Press the trigger.
What can we learn from our US counterparts?
The job we do is extremely dangerous. To go out there unarmed is insane to me.
Is it now time for tasers? An LBC special with me, Nick Ferrari, all next week on Breakfast.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC.
Nissan ProPilot helps look after you over here and over here, all while helping you keep in lane here. Now available in the Nissan Qashqai N Connector with an additional £750 deposit contribution, making a total deposit contribution of £2,750 at 4.99% APR representative. Only at the Nissan Advanced Tech event until 15th of September. Visit your local dealership today. You shouldn't rely solely on driver convenience features. Offer available on Qashqai N Connector with ProPilot. Retail customers only. Nissan finance subject to status over 18s. Vehicles to be ordered and registered by 15th of September 2019. Participating dealers only. T's and C's apply. Visit nissan.co.uk. Nissan. Innovation that excites.
We spoke to the Cans from Sly about what BT's new complete Wi-Fi brings to their busy house.
Now the Wi-Fi literally does reach every corner of the house. We have 11 people that all use the Wi-Fi for different things, and the Wi-Fi disc has helped that so much.
The harmony in the house has improved 10 or 20-fold.
The Cans are 11 more happy BT customers with complete Wi-Fi that guarantees a Wi-Fi signal in every room.
Up to 3 discs to guarantee Wi-Fi or £20 off your bill. Terms apply.
Bangers and mash, showers and power ballads, tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app with no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
Find yourself in a world you have only imagined. Begin your journey with the award-winning Qatar Airways, named World's Best Airline at the 2019 Skytrax Awards, and experience the world like never before. Enjoy flights from London Heathrow and London Gatwick to more than 160 destinations worldwide, including Bali, Bangkok, Perth and Sydney. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways. going places together.
Oh, I found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
Ugh, this floor is an eyesore.
Need some flooring inspiration? Get to B&Q. You'll love our new Good Home Wood Effect flooring range, especially with price cuts on selected laminates, like Gladstone Grey Oak Effect was £10 per square metre, now £8. You can do it when you B&Q it. Pack price was £19.96, now £15.97.
Monday night on ITV. Based on a true story.
You heard from her?
No. They can't think of a reason why she'd be out of contact for this long.
A detective must cross the line.
I wasn't playing games, I was pleading for Sian's life. What was I supposed to say?
To reach the truth.
You're breaching every code of practice.
It's my daughter, isn't it? She's the second girl.
We have got to investigate this properly.
New 6-part drama starring Martin Freeman. A Confession starts this Monday night at 9 on ITV and watch on ITV Hub.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, another political issue on which I've campaigned long and hard against is HS2. It always seemed to me that it was going to cost way too much money for very little benefit, and I thought probably bring more business to London rather than help the regions. So I've been very opposed to it, but... and I've never discussed this properly before with Andrew Adonis. Andrew, you're one of the architects of this.
Yeah, I like to think I'm the architect, and I published the original plan 10 years ago now, which was then supported by all the major parties, which is why it's going ahead as it is at the moment.
But the cost of it, I mean, the original estimate was about £56 billion, when no private money whatsoever came for this project, did it?
Well, it was never intended to, because it's a state project. It's very hard to build railway lines, given the very long payback period, by private money. And across the globe, railway lines are almost entirely built by the state. The only railway line that's been built by private money in this country recently was the Heathrow Express route, which is very short, and that was essentially a licence to print money, because of course they had a monopoly of the market, and they were allowed by... the government allowed Heathrow to exploit that as a kind of franchise. But building, we're talking about a 300-mile railway, HS2. Those sorts of railways across the world are always built by the state.
And what do you think the final cost might be?
I don't know, but it's going to be high. But the point I'd make on that, Nigel, is that all big infrastructure projects, unfortunately, I mean, we need better management. If good management was in place, we could get the costs down. They always go over budget. Unfortunately, Crossrail, which is being built in London at the moment, and everyone thinks that's a great idea because London is so congested. That's coming in several billion over budget. Nuclear power stations, they come in over budget. Existing railway projects, they all come in over budget. This isn't an issue unique to HS2. Unfortunately, it's something about the way we do infrastructure projects, and we need to get better.
So if the cost of HS2 is going to be nearly double the original projection, has it been mismanaged?
The management hasn't been good enough. Yes, I'd agree with that. It hasn't been strong enough. There's been too much change in the chief executive role in HS2. We've had, since I was Transport Secretary, we've had almost a Transport Secretary a year. That's not a great way to run the country, is it? To have these big jobs changing all the time.
I would agree with that with lots of government departments. I mean, so far, we've sunk about £7 billion into HS2. The government are now launching a review because they know how wildly unpopular HS2 is out there in the country. I mean, it doesn't actually, even when it's completed, benefit many people, does it?
It benefits the country hugely, because what it does is to link up the 4 largest conurbations and cities in the country: London, Birmingham and the West Midlands, Manchester and the North West, and Sheffield and Leeds and Yorkshire. Now, that is a huge part of the population of the country is therefore connected, and it also reduces pressure on the existing railway lines, which are massively congested at the moment, which means you can run more commuter services into all those cities too. So it's win-win, and I can understand why you don't like it, Nigel, because it's the thing that most of Europe does and most of Asia does. France, Germany, Italy, China, Japan, all of these countries have for decades had high-speed lines linking their major cities. I regard that as a reason why we should follow suit, because if the rest of the world does something and it works well, it's a good idea for us to do it. I know that you tend to draw the opposite conclusion.
It's about priorities, and I just think that given the world we're in, the abysmal state of mobile phone connectivity and broadband connectivity, that to me is a higher priority. But hey, that's about what money we spend, how we spend it.
I agree with you, by the way, on 4G, which is deplorable, and broadband, but those are being provided by private companies. And what the government should be doing is requiring those private companies, Vodafone, BT, to do their job. And the government hasn't been doing that. It's not government money that's needed to get decent broadband and decent mobile connectivity in this country. It's the government doing its job, and it just hasn't been doing it.
Well, we lag so far behind many parts of the world. But let's get some questions into you on HS2, and our first caller on this, believe it or not, is calling from Shanghai, and it's Charlie. Hello, Charlie.
Good afternoon, Mr. Farage. Or Farage, it's amazing to be speaking to you, because you're quite a hero over here in China. There's a huge British expatriate community over here, and it's really an honor to be speaking to the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Well, I don't know about that, Charlie.
I don't think Boris Johnson's very keen on that idea.
Well, but I tell you what, Charlie.
I think that Boris Johnson, if he screws up the Brexit, then or if he tries to put Miss May's agreement back to the populace, what's going to happen is that a lot of people are going to leave the Conservative Party, and they're all going to vote.
Charlie, fascinating, but you did call. Come on, about HS2.
Okay, well, what I want to say about HS2 is that it is an utter and complete waste of money. And it is very self-serving for someone to say, oh, because China has bullet trains, so we should have bullet trains in England. And the fact of the matter is that a bullet train in China costs between $17 million and maybe on the upwards $21 million, depending on the number of tunnels they have to dig through to build. And these are all high-speed railways that the high-speed railways in China have changed the country. But the fact of the matter is they're inexpensive to build. And even at a cost of 17 to 22 million per kilometer, there's still a question that they will ever pay for themselves. But I regularly take the high-speed trains in China. The joke is that this train in the UK is going to cost 25 times as much as
Okay, Charlie, I've got the point. Why can the Chinese do it so much more cheaply? Lord Adonis. Why? Charlie's telling us that ours is costing infinitely more than they can do it in China. Why?
Yeah, well, I take Charlie to be saying he thinks that these high-speed lines are a good idea in China. He says he uses them frequently.
He does.
Now, when I was doing the planning for HS2, I visited China. I went on the line from Beijing to Tianjin, so I know the Chinese system well. And they said to me then that they'd be happy to help us build our high-speed line. And I said, we want all of the best international expertise on building high-speed lines. And there's great expertise in China, in Japan, in France, in Germany. My own view is we should be making much better use of international expertise and management, and that would help us get the costs down.
Okay, I've got one more quick question on HS2. Jeff in Munich has a question.
Yeah, hello, Nigel, greetings, Lord Adonis. I admire what you said in the last hour, but I have an issue with you. You spoke about, budgets getting out of control, which is natural on these projects. I'm a construction project manager. I've worked for some of the largest technical firms in the world. The job of a project manager is to ensure the project comes in on time, under budget, and to the necessary quality. So what is wrong with the people who are involved in this project?
They're clearly not doing their job properly, Jeff. That's the point. And it sounds as if we should get your details and put you in charge, because if you can deliver these things on time, on budget, we need you, because we haven't got enough people like that delivering our major infrastructure projects, not just HS2, but across the board, our energy projects, our telecoms projects, all of that. And if we could get better value for money, we'd have much better infrastructure across the whole country.
Jeff, thank you for your question. Thank you for your question, Jeff. I'm afraid we're out of time. Andrew Adonis, thank you as ever for coming in and having
Thank you, Nigel. And I noticed your
debate.
voice has got a lot better during the course of the hour.
I'm drinking honey in tea, and it's helping slightly. But I've got to give a big public speech tomorrow night in Colchester. I'm not yet sure that's going to be happening. But thank you very much indeed for coming in. And in the next hour, we are going to talk to Conservative Member of Parliament Daniel Kaczynski. He was in the ERG group, he resigned from it, he's keen to get Brexit done. He also wants to talk about the fact that 80 years ago today, war was declared on Poland. So we'll get Daniel Kaczynski, your questions, 0345 6060 973. Now it's time for the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator has insisted Brussels won't scrap the backstop, saying it represents the maximum flexibility Brussels can offer a non-member state. Michel Barnier's comments appear to be at odds with Boris Johnson's suggestion European leaders are open to making changes. The measure is designed to avoid the need for border checks with Ireland if a post-Brexit trade deal can't be agreed. Ahead of an expected common showdown this week, the Prime Minister has issued a warning to rebel Tory MPs. The International Development Secretary Alok Sharma has told Conservative colleagues they need to be clear whose side they're on.
Are you on the side of people who want to frustrate Brexit, people who would actually ruin the economy, people who, frankly, at the end of the day, are not prepared to stand up for Britain? Or do you want to stand with the people, deliver on the referendum result?
At least 21 people have been shot and 5 people have died after a gunman started firing randomly in the US state of Texas. 3 police officers and a 17-month-old child are among those hurt in the cities of Midland and Odessa. A suspect has been shot dead by police. US TV reporter Derek Myers has told LBC the shooting rampage began when officers tried to stop a car.
This gunman started opening fire through his rear window as he was eluding police in a high-speed chase and shot one of the police officers through the window with that shotgun.
2 men in their 20s have suffered life-threatening injuries in a triple stabbing in East London. A teenager was also hurt near Barking Park late last night. Scotland Yard says it hasn't made any arrests. Flights to and from UK airports are being disrupted by a problem with French air traffic control. Many passengers have reported planes waiting on the tarmac for 2 hours, awaiting permission for takeoff. Service on the express train to Hong Kong's airport has been suspended due to the latest protests by pro-democracy campaigners. Police say hundreds who've gathered at the air travel hub are violating a court injunction. People in parts of the Bahamas have left their homes with Hurricane Dorian due to arrive in the next 24 hours. It's strengthened to a Category 4 storm with winds of 150 miles an hour and is expected to affect Florida tomorrow. And world leaders have gathered in Warsaw to mark the German invasion of Poland exactly 80 years ago. The arrival of troops on September the 1st, 1939, led to Britain entering into the Second World War 2 days later. LBC weather, a mix of sunshine and showers, some heavy and thundery rain for northern and central areas of the UK, a high of 21 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm John Stratford.
At Indeed, we believe a CV is a great way to see an overview of a candidate. But you're not hiring a CV, you're hiring a person. That's why Indeed offers tools that help bridge the gap between a candidate and their CV. Like skill tests, which let you actually see a candidate's abilities in action to make sure they're a good fit for the job. See beyond the CV with Indeed. Experience Indeed for yourself today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting at Indeed.com/redeem. Terms and conditions apply.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, right in the very middle of this whole Brexit drama is, of course, the Conservative Party. And what a traumatic year it's been for them. The European elections, where they got less than 10% of the vote, their worst ever result in a national election since they began. And that led very directly to Theresa May going, a contest, and now Boris Johnson leading the party saying, we're going to deliver Brexit 31st of October, do or die. But there are splits, there are difficulties, there are issues. And joining me to talk about all of that is Daniel Kaczynski, former ERG member and Conservative Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury. Daniel, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Nigel.
So tell me something. You were rather a convert to Brexit, I think, after the referendum.
Well, I discussed Cameron's renegotiation with my association. We sat down with the senior members of my local party in Shrewsbury, and we debated as to what our perception was of Cameron's 2-year negotiation with the European Union. I think he travelled to all 27 European capitals over a 2-year period, and he put to the European Union issues which were being brought to the fore by British citizens. UKIP had obviously won the European elections, and there was a very strong message from the British people that they were worried about the ongoing flow of power from Westminster to Brussels. They were worried about the free movement of people being unsustainable and unmanaged, and we put these concerns to the European Union over a 2-year process. They chose to blow a raspberry at us. Despite being one of only two or three contributors to the EU budget, giving more money than we take in. I think according to the House of Commons Library, we've put in a net of £500 billion into the EU budget since we joined in 1972. Despite all of the things that we've done, they chose to ignore those genuine concerns. And that's why I decided to campaign for Brexit. And I'm very pleased to say to you that Shrewsbury voted for Brexit.
Now, when it came to Mrs May's negotiation, you've talked about David Cameron's one, she came back with a new European treaty. You voted against it on the first 2 attempts in Parliament and then voted for it on the third.
Yes, again, because I'm the sort of member of Parliament who has very, very extensive discussions with my Executive Council. Conservative MPs have their local associations. On average, we have about 500 members per constituency. But within those 500 members is a hard core of senior party members who run local campaigns and who run the association. And they were Remain and Brexiteers. Very, very mixed in my association. But I discussed it with them, and they said to me, they let me vote, do my own thing on the first and second time, but on the third time, they came to me and said, look, we're very worried. We understand that you have reservations about the withdrawal agreement, but we just want to get this thing over the line. We want you to vote for it. We want to get out of the European Union. And they foresaw all the difficulties and problems that we have subsequently had with people like Lord Adonis and others in trying to derail the whole process, implement more delays, and cause the difficulties that we're currently experiencing.
And is this what led, Daniel, to your resignation from the ERG group?
Well, I will answer that, but it wasn't just my local association. It was also all of my councillors in Shrewsbury said to me, look, the time has come to vote for the withdrawal agreement. Various elements of Shrewsbury Business Chamber and the local NFU, they all came to me and said, now is the time to vote for the withdrawal agreement, make a compromise, show some flexibility, vote for it. And I resigned from the ERG, and I have been a very active member of the ERG for over a year, very close friends with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who I respect enormously. But I resigned because I felt that some of the very, very hardcore elements of the ERG, I won't refer to any specific names, but some of those hardcore elements of the ERG showed no flexibility whatsoever, and therefore prevented the withdrawal agreement from going through, and therefore prevented us from leaving the European Union on the 31st of March. Now, by the way, if all the members of the ERG had voted for the withdrawal agreement, it would have been defeated, I believe, by 2 votes. But then I also have spoken to 1 or 2 other Tory MPs who were not members of the ERG, who have told me that they also would have voted for the withdrawal agreement if they had seen the whole of the ERG compromise and vote for it. So I think if they had all voted for it, the vote would have been tied, and the Speaker would have been obliged to support the government.
Do you think, Daniel, if we were to sign, because Boris clearly is trying to reheat Mrs May's, and let's call it what it is, new European treaty, do you think if Boris was to get that through Parliament, we'd ever leave the customs union?
I think it's absolutely essential that the Prime Minister attempts to renegotiate the Northern Ireland backstop from the withdrawal agreement. Mrs Merkel has said, I think in leaked EU documents today that have been publicised, that she's impressed with his approach, but she has obviously given him a very limited time in order to explain directly to Germany and France why and how, what are the measures that we want to put forward for guaranteeing the various aspects of the Northern Ireland border whilst taking the Northern Ireland backstop out. Now, if he can do it, I have to tell you, Nigel, there are many Conservative MPs like me who will vote for the new withdrawal agreement as long as the Northern Ireland backstop is taken out, because we want to compromise. The country is so divided, and I know that you and others are against the withdrawal agreement, even if the Northern Ireland backstop is taken out. But unfortunately, that, if the EU is prepared to compromise on that, we need to grab it with both arms, get it across the line, and then move on. And by the way, we will continue to negotiate with the European Union for the rest of our lives, as long as that body continues to exist. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Let's get out, and Daniel, let's use our new position as a sovereign nation to carry on blunting some of the excesses of the European Union, particularly over the EU army and other issues which could be really damaging to the United Kingdom. But let's get out, Nigel.
Daniel, my view is if we sign up to the withdrawal agreement, we literally hand over complete power for the next several years to the EU, and I think we'll find ourselves in a worse place than we are now. But just for the moment, imagine that Monsieur Barnier, who said what he said, let's say there is no give on the backstop, okay? Let's say Boris cannot get the compromise that he needs. Are you ready to push for us leaving with a clean break, no deal on the 31st of October?
Oh, absolutely. And, I want you to know that one of the biggest exporters in Shrewsbury to the European Union is a company called Salop Design and Engineering. They make massive, huge numbers of components that are exported to the European Union. And Richard Hondren, the managing director, says to me, just get on with it. We know how to fill out the forms when we export our parts to the United States of America and the rest of the world. We know how to pay the tariffs. We will do the same with our European partners, and we're already in discussions with them. So I think a lot of British businesses are actually much more prepared for this than the BBC and others would have you believe. Of course I would support a managed no deal if Barnier and if the European Union were not prepared to respect and understand that the Northern Ireland backstop has prevented the House of Commons from ratifying this agreement on 3 separate occasions. If they continue to be that obstinate and that recalcitrant, we will have no option but to pull out without a deal.
That's clear. Now, we are going to take questions from members of the public, 0345 6060 973. Before that, by text, I'm asked Daniel if shutting Parliament down is an affront to democracy, asks Mark in Sunderland.
Well, of course, it's not shutting Parliament down. What's happening is this session of Parliament has been the longest, I think, for over 50 years. We need a new session of Parliament. This is a new Prime Minister. He needs to set out his vision for the country and his legislative programme, and proroguing needs to take place. I think we are going to be losing 4 or 5 days as a result of this prorogation. And the most important thing is this: the team captain, our head negotiator, the man representing the United Kingdom, is going back to the European Union to say to them, give me a renegotiated deal that I can get through the British Parliament. It's not for the British Parliament to negotiate international treaties. It is for them to either ratify or reject international treaties. Allow the Prime Minister to go and renegotiate. October the 17th is the critical day when there is the EU Council, when we will find out whether or not they are finally prepared to give us a new deal. And from that moment, Parliament will be able to decide whether or not they accept it. So there's plenty of time after October the 17th for Parliament either to bring this government down or to reject the deal as they see fit. But allow the head negotiator to finish his job. And I have to say to you, people like Tom Brake, who I was debating with yesterday on the radio, and people like Lord Adonis, I find it staggering and deeply disconcerting how these people are prepared to undermine our head negotiator representing the United Kingdom at this critical juncture. I find that mind-blowing.
No, and that's
absolutely mind-blowing.
No, that's a strong view. Please, your questions, comments, your views into Daniel Kaczynski. For now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:15.
This is LBC.
Monday night on ITV. Based on a true story.
You heard from her?
No. They can't think of a reason why she'd be out of contact for this long.
A detective must cross the line.
I wasn't playing games, I was pleading for Sian's life. What was I supposed to say?
To reach the truth.
You're breaching every code of practice.
It's my daughter, isn't it? She's the second girl.
We have got to investigate this properly.
New 6-part drama starring Martin Freeman. A Confession. Starts this Monday night at 9 on ITV. And watch on ITV Hub.
Bangers and mash. Showers and power ballads, tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app with no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
Join us at the world-famous Royal Albert Hall this November as we celebrate 30 years of classical spectacular. Experience a show like no other with over 200 musicians live on stage, state-of-the-art lights, lasers, and a thundering firework finale. Celebrate classical spectacular at the Royal Albert Hall from the 21st to the 24th of November. Book now at royalalberthall.com.
I never belong. I gotta be me. I gotta be me.
This summer there's even more to sing about with the Skoda Summer Special, because now there's an extra £500 off list price on top of our existing finance offers across the Skoda range. Search Skoda Summer Special for more details. Exclude Citigo and all SE technology variants. Order and register by the 30th of September 2019. UK retail customers only. Offer not available with contract hire. See skoda.co.uk for more details. Finance subject to status. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. Skoda Financial Services.
Football is back on Sky Sports. With our total football offer, you get all our football for just £18 extra a month. Absolutely amazing. Sky Sports has more live games than ever before and more of the biggest fixtures. That means more passion, more drama, more glory. All for just £18 extra a month. And it's live. Search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports Football and Premier League, £18 a month for 18 months. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change during this period. Offer ends September 26th.
At first, we were worried about using purple bricks, but since we sold with them, I haven't been able to stop going on about them, have I, dear?
No, love.
I've been telling everyone. Family, friends, that confused guy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you haven't really shut up about that.
But seriously, did I tell you about our purple bricks estate agent, Michael?
I met him too. He was nice.
We could talk to him whenever. Anything we asked, he could do it.
That's enough now,
He
dear.
was brilliant, always available to chat on the phone.
Enough,
I
Robert.
could email him any time of the day or night.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
I've got a constituent here of Daniel Kaczynski's who says, I do not recognise his view that the withdrawal agreement is okay. Daniel, just tell us again why, without the backstop, you would vote for the withdrawal agreement.
Well, of course, there are people who still say within the ERG and outside who say that no, the whole agreement needs to be unpicked, and we need to go back and start renegotiating all matter of issues. My concern about that is that we have been doing this for 3 years. We still haven't got an agreement. The only thing that I think that we can convince the Europeans to change, and this is why the Prime Minister is quite rightly focusing on it, is the Northern Ireland backstop. And if the European Union are prepared to compromise on that, we need to ratify it quickly and get out of the European Union. My concern, Nigel, is if we go, and you know these people better than most, my concern is that if we start going back to them and demanding all sorts of other changes to various aspects of the withdrawal agreement, such as the £39 billion, such as the jurisdiction of the ECJ and all the other aspects, they will just basically throw their toys out of the pram and say no, and we will hurtle towards a no deal.
Well,
I want to try to avoid a no deal, Nigel.
Daniel, I have to say, I really hope that the European Union proved to be as pig-headed as they were with David Cameron, because I would rather we left with a clean break. But let's go to the public. Let's get a call in from Mark from the Western Isles, who's a new caller. Good morning, Mark.
How you doing, Nigel? I'd just like to say I'm a massive fan. And if I'm right, Lord O'Donnell, he's moved from being a Remainer to a Brexiteer, is that right?
Well, Daniel did move to the Brexit position, and that's where he is still, yes.
Yeah, because if he's agreeing with the withdrawal agreement, I think that's dead in the water. I'm Scottish, where obviously more than 64% voted to remain, but I'm a Labour, right? And we had obviously a referendum in Scotland that kept us in the UK, and then the UK had a referendum to leave Europe. So I don't know what Nicola Sturgeon's on about, that Scotland's not got a mandate and all this. But I just wanted to get my point across that I think the withdrawal agreement's dead. You've got a lot more support in Scotland than you think. And I just don't think there's enough Scottish voices on there. And I do believe what you say, that Boris Johnson's just trying to use Theresa May's deal to get rid of the backstop, but it still keeps us in the customs union for years. And then I don't know what your age is, Nigel, but I don't think you'll be around for the next referendum. I'm only 37. I might make it, but I don't want to have another 30 years.
No, I don't. Daniel, you listen to Mark. He's very, very sceptical about the withdrawal agreement. I mean, tell Mark, with this withdrawal agreement, what chance is there of the Western Isles getting back their fishing rights?
Well, Nigel, I think you will be around for much longer than the caller has said. I wish in Polish we sing "Happy Birthday." We wish you 100 years. I wish you 100 years, Nigel.
Whoa! Thank you.
Look, I mean, we're going to disagree, though, obviously, on the withdrawal agreement. I think at this stage, and I'm only reiterating what I said before. I think at this stage, with so little time to go, and by the way, we are leaving on the 31st of October, do or die. I'm thrilled that the Prime Minister has put his reputation so squarely on the line in an unprecedented way that he is determined to pull us out on the 31st of October. Interestingly, the delays have been absolutely draining, and so many businesses are now saying to me, look, just get on with it. It's the uncertainty that we can't grapple with. It's the uncertainty that's damaging our prospects. Just pull out. And that is the instruction that the British people, whether they were Remainers or whether they were Brexiteers, are now clearly saying in all the opinion polls, just get out on the 31st. Now, the likelihood of pulling out on the 31st is much more accentuated if we get movement on the Northern Ireland backstop and we can ratify the agreement. If we throw everything out and go back to the drawing board, it is very unlikely that the European Union is going to agree a completely new policy.
I think we all accept that, and certainly Mark in Western Isles does. I'm going to move on to Mark in Hitchin. Good morning, Mark.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Daniel.
Good morning.
Good morning. You have said you support the proroguing of Parliament. I am very concerned of your position after Matt Hancock pointed out only a month or so ago that to prorogue Parliament would be against, and I quote, everything those men who waded onto those beaches fought and died for. Now, they fought and died for the liberation of Europe and Poland. So, quite frankly, I'd like to, A, justify your position on proroguing Parliament and explain to me why Matt Hancock is wrong.
Well, I think what Matt Hancock and others were referring to, and I think even Jacob Rees-Mogg referred to this a few months ago, is that to prorogue Parliament somehow and to suspend it beyond October the 31st would be highly inappropriate. If the Prime Minister said we are going to have prorogation and it's going to last until November the 1st and Parliament is not going to be able to block this treaty, that would have been wrong and potentially unconstitutional. But he hasn't done that. He's prorogued it, and we are going to actually be able to see, as I've said before, what the new deal is on October the 17th when the EU Council meets. And then from October the 17th, Parliament will have every opportunity to look at that new deal that the Prime Minister has negotiated with the European Union, with the European Commission, and either accept it or reject it, or bring the government down, or instigate another Prime Minister as the head of a Remainer coalition. They will have all of those options before October the 31st. So they will still have an opportunity to influence and either accept or reject the new deal that the Prime Minister has brought back. So I think proroguing and preventing anybody from having a say beyond November the 1st would have been inappropriate, but that's not what the Prime Minister has done.
So, Mark, it's all about context. It's all about context.
Can I please answer the question now?
Go on.
Thank you, because I've been saying that for the last minute, and you've deliberately faded me out. Matt Hancock made no reference to proroguing to the 31st of October. He was talking about proroguing Parliament full stop. Now, let's talk about proroguing Parliament. Why have we closed it down for 30 days? Explain why we need to close it down for 30-plus days. That hasn't happened since 1945. And the excuse given by Number 10 Downing Street was because Parliament was going to go to a conference and have a conference recess. Of course, conference can't happen and the recess can't happen unless Parliament votes to go into recess. Now, that vote was not put before Parliament. So it was taken away by the government by proroguing Parliament. And when you prorogue Parliament, you close it down. When you put Parliament into recess, Parliament continues to operate, the House of Lords can continue to sit, and Parliament can be recalled. This is a blatant power grab, and I'm afraid, Daniel, you still haven't justified. My original question was, why is Matt Hancock wrong about all those people who died on the beaches to liberate Europe?
Well, we fundamentally have a fundamentally strong difference of opinion. I believe the Prime Minister has acted constitutionally, and Parliament will have every right to assess the deal after October the 17th. We haven't actually sat in late September for over 80 years. And of course, before the current recess, Jacob Rees-Mogg, as the leader of the House...
Right, before you go into a monologue, can I actually say something as well? We're entering a period of national possible emergency. This morning, your government ministers on the TV could not confirm that, well, what they confirmed was we will have the food that we need, not the food that we want. He also confirmed that he may not, even if legislation is brought forward and passed next week in Parliament, he made it clear that he would not say that he would abide by that law. And with respect to we have a difference of opinion, you can do a Queen's speech if you need to in 3 days. You don't need to close Parliament down for 30 days.
Mark, can I ask, what is it you want?
What is it in terms of what?
What do you want? Article 50 revoked? Do you want a new government? Do you want a motion of confidence
I'll
next
tell you
week?
what
do you want?
No, hang on. Well, hang on. Let me answer that, Nigel. Okay. Yesterday, I went and protested about the proroguing of Parliament. Now, let me explain why, though. Because
Mark,
let me explain why. Nigel, let me explain why I did that.
What do you want?
Right. So what I want is I want my representative parliamentary democracy not to be shut down. What I protested against yesterday was not about Brexit. I don't care if you want Brexit. I don't care if you don't want Brexit. What I want is my elected representative inside that building scrutinising every move the government is doing, and they have deliberately blocked Parliament. I talked about the vote that is needed.
And on Brexit, Mark, what do you want?
What do I want on Brexit?
Yes.
I think at this present moment in time, it depends on who you want to believe, don't it? What Boris Johnson said.
Do you want to leave?
No, let me finish. You asked me what I wanted. Let me answer.
Yeah. Well, you got 20 seconds to answer it.
Right. Boris Johnson said when he was in the when he was a member of the committee of the Vote Leave campaign, what we will do is we will negotiate the terms of a deal first. This is our Prime Minister, and then we will leave. He's not doing that. He's trying to force through a no-deal Brexit, and I'm afraid when the Vote Leave won, they made it clear to us that we would not be getting a no deal. Nobody's voted for a no deal. Over 50% in the last election voted for parties who didn't want a no deal.
Well,
so I'm afraid what we have here is a power grab by the
Mark, believe you me, Boris Johnson doesn't want no deal either. Daniel, let me ask you. So John Major is joining Gina Miller to try and use every tactic they can. He's complaining about the proroguing of Parliament, despite himself proroguing Parliament back in 1997. Do you have a message for John Major?
Where do I start? Look, I think that John Major used all sorts of shenanigans to force through the Maastricht Treaty with a majority of 8, during his premiership. I think he's doing a great disservice to this country, and I think he needs to back the Prime Minister. But can I just say one thing, Nigel? In reply to the previous caller, Professor Vernon Bogdanor is genuinely known as one of the eminent experts in the United Kingdom on the Constitution, on Parliament and its remit. And Vernon Bogdanor has written a very extensive piece in the Guardian newspaper just 2 days ago outlining and supporting the Prime Minister's stance on prorogation, and actually saying that Parliament and its actions has brought this upon itself. And that is the eminent British expert on parliamentary constitution.
Yeah, and a keen Remainer too. Daniel Kaczynski is with me. We're talking about Brexit. We'll also talk a bit about Hong Kong, and we'll also talk about the fact that 80 years ago today, Poland was invaded by Nazi Germany. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. It's 11:31, time for the news with John Stratford.
The EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says the backstop represents the maximum flexibility Brussels can offer, and it won't be removed from the withdrawal agreement. The Cabinet Minister Michael Gove has refused to confirm the government would abide by any legislation blocking a no-deal Brexit that may be forced through by Tory rebels and opposition MPs this week. At least 21 people have been injured and 5 have been killed after a gunman began randomly firing in Texas. It brings the number of mass shootings in the United States so far this year to 25, as many as in the whole of 2018. Schools in England rated as outstanding by Ofsted will no longer be exempt from routine inspections. The government says the change will ensure parents have up-to-date information. LBC weather, a mix of sunshine and showers, some heavy and thundery rain for northern and central areas of the UK, a high of 21 degrees.
This is LBC.
Jason, did you put the bins out?
No, I did it last week.
Yes, and I did it yesterday when you took the car to work.
I saved the space while you picked up Ellie from ballet.
And I put them out when you gave Mum a lift to hospital.
At Hey Car, all of our used cars are quality checked, supplied by selected dealers and come with a warranty. So finding a car you'll love is easy. You just need to find somewhere to park it.
Quick, Number 10 has gone out. Grab the bins and I'll get the car keys.
Find your perfect used car at heycar.co.uk.
Set for Life is the new game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play new Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Monday night on ITV. Based on a true story.
You heard from her?
No. They can't think of a reason why she'd be out of contact for this long.
A detective must cross the line
I wasn't playing games, I was pleading for Sian's life. What was I supposed to say?
to reach the truth.
You're breaching every code of practice.
It's my daughter, isn't it? She's the second girl.
We have got to investigate this properly.
New 6-part drama starring Martin Freeman. A Confession starts this Monday night at 9 on ITV and watch on ITV Hub.
Pimlico Plumbers is the company you can trust. Yes, you can. And they're so much more than just plumbers. They have qualified electricians, skilled carpenters, gas-safe heating engineers. For bathrooms, kitchens, appliances, building, roofing, drains, and of course plumbing. They've got you covered. Contact Pimlico today on 0207 928 8888 or at pimlicoplumbers.com, where the answer will be yes, we can. 24 hours a day and with a 1-hour response when required.
Nissan ProPilot helps look after you over here and over here, all while helping you keep in lane here. Now available in the Nissan Qashqai N Connector with an additional £750 deposit contribution, making a total deposit contribution of £2,750 at 4.99% APR representative. Only at the Nissan Advanced Tech event until 15th of September. Visit your local dealership today. You shouldn't rely solely on driver convenience features. Offer available on Qashqai N Connector with ProPilot. Retail customers only. Nissan Finance subject to status over 18s. Vehicles to be ordered and registered by 15th of September 2019. Participating dealers only. T's and C's apply. Visit nissan.co.uk. Nissan. Innovation that excites.
It's the month-end sale at Oak Furnitureland. So find a look you love. Always in 100% solid hardwood, all with great savings and delivered free too. Don't miss the month-end sale at Oak Furnitureland. Online and in-store. But hurry, it ends Sunday.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
I'm joined by Daniel Kaczynski. He's taking your calls. Conservative Brexiteer. You can ask him, within reason, anything you want. Before that, yesterday in Hong Kong, the levels of violence on the streets, the behaviour of the Chinese police reaching new levels. The whole situation there is shocking. I am absolutely amazed that the British Prime Minister says nothing about it whatsoever. The only person that does is Donald Trump. Now, you could argue Trump, of course, has a trade war with China. Boris Johnson's worried about perhaps upsetting trade allies. But I wonder, Daniel Kaczynski, shouldn't the British government be saying and doing more about Hong Kong?
Absolutely, and of course, given our the historic context of our dealings with Hong Kong, we have a unique responsibility for the people there. Margaret Thatcher signed an agreement with the Chinese in 1984, which was the prelude to one country, two systems. And of course, the Chinese are reneging on that agreement and oppressing these demonstrators. But Nigel, it's not just the way they're treating the protesters in Hong Kong in such a brutal way. It's also what you see them doing in the South China Sea, basically taking over thousands of atolls and pouring concrete onto them, turning them into aircraft carriers, airstrips, stealing these islands from the Philippines, from Malaysia, from Vietnam and other countries. They are just letting rip in the South China Sea. I think something like 60% of the world's trade flows through the South China Sea. Britain and America have instigated freedom of navigation exercises through the South China Sea in conjunction with the Australians, who are extremely worried about the situation there. So whether or not their conduct there, whether it's their conduct in Hong Kong but also in Tibet, this is a country that is a permanent member of the UN Security Council and should have a much higher level of standards than ordinary countries. It's right that we sanction Russia over her conduct in Donbass and Lugansk and Crimea. But why is it that we are much more lenient on the Chinese in comparison with the Russians? And I would say it's all related to trade. And if that is the case, then it's highly hypocritical.
I couldn't agree more. Boris, please say something. We have a responsibility. Let's go to Steve, who's calling from Sweden. Good morning, Steve.
Hello, Nigel. Hello, Daniel. I wonder if there is ever a solution within Ireland from the point of view that the EU are worried that it should be a funnel for unrecognised, unregistered importation into the single market, and the British side, the Northern Irish point of view, is to protect its boundaries from the unregulated extension of Schengen and so forth. I know that don't believe Ireland are in Schengen, but unless we return to the enhanced customs and border cooperation that we used to have before Varadkar came on the scene and saw his opportunity, I can't see how we can ever really make Ireland work in the way that everybody would be a lot better off. Can you?
Nigel, do you want to answer that? Or
no, I think that Varadkar really has stirred the pot in many, many ways. He, in my opinion, Steve, he served the interests of the European Commission, not the interests, actually, of Irish farmers and Irish businessmen. And I think we're in a bad place. No question. We're in a bad place. But I don't, Steve, whatever happens here, see a hard border having to be built. So I think in time things will mend, but a new Taoiseach would help.
It also accentuates, in my view, just how powerful the EU Commission is becoming. These are, as Nigel will tell you, completely unelected and unaccountable people, men in grey suits, over whom we have almost negligible authority, and yet they are in the driving seat to establish the bilateral relations between two neighbouring countries. It ought to be for Britain and Ireland to be able to negotiate with one another a mutually satisfactory solution, rather than this being imposed by the European Union.
Final word from you, Steve?
Well, if only, perhaps the attitude with the EU would change markedly if they were seeking to gain our cooperation rather than to give away something they think they should have for perpetuity.
No, it's going to be a tough one and no easy answers. Thank you. Let's go to Barnes and speak to James. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning. Daniel, unless I misheard you, and I may well have done, you seem to be insinuating that Mr. Johnson is trying to do and get another deal with the European Union. But Mr. Johnson, who when he said to Mrs. Merkel when they met that he was going to come up with a number of ideas for the backstop, in 2 weeks, according to Mrs. Merkel yesterday, has given the European Union nothing. And it seems to me a rather strange action of somebody that you are suggesting is negotiating very hard to find a new solution and a new deal. Because if he was, he would have already been giving something to Mrs. Merkel. So I wanted to ask you about that. But also, you talk about that the European Union, this undemocratically elected bunch of people, but at the same time, Mr. Johnson, even with his new cabinet, sent Mr. Rees-Mogg to the Queen, and it was only after the Queen had signed the prorogation of Parliament papers, the cabinet were then informed. And it seems to me that when we talk about democracy, and I think this is a question of not whether you want to leave or remain, I think it's gone past that. And I think it's a red herring to say, the people that remain are against Mr. Johnson and the people that want to leave are for him. I don't believe that. And I think that this is far more about the fundamentals of democracy and honesty. And when you have two people in the cabinet who said specifically if anybody wants to prorogue Parliament, it will be an affront to democracy, Mr. Jove and Mr.
We have James. We have covered that ground already, but please, Daniel, pick up on the earlier points.
Well, what I would say is that I think last week it was genuinely acknowledged that Mrs. Merkel, after a meeting with the Prime Minister in Berlin, stated that she was giving us 30 days to come up with a credible solution which they could evaluate over the Northern Ireland backstop. That 30 days is not up. The Prime Minister is clearly presenting a watertight case to be presented to the European Commission within the time frame set out by Mrs. Merkel. And when that deadline is reached and when those are presented, then they will have to evaluate it. So your point about that he hasn't immediately given the solution on day 8 or day 9, I don't think actually holds water. See what he comes up with and see if it is a credible policy for the Europeans to evaluate. I have every confidence in him.
But he has been saying, since he was standing for election for the leader of the party, about what the deal could be, and it can be done. You would have thought that somebody that's planned a month ahead all the different scenarios, he would have already known what this was going to be. He would have that deal and would have taken it to them. So that doesn't, I'm afraid, your point doesn't hold true, because he was selling himself as the leader of the party that this can be done. And so why did he not already have it all in black and white and giving it to the European Union? Why wait? And it seems to me that all this is about is a PR stunt, that what he will do, which is already we're hearing, and it will be the Europeans' fault. They're intransigent, they're not prepared to negotiate.
Well, James, you've had a very good run. Daniel, I have to say, Daniel, to you, that Heather says from Ivor, how lucky the people of Shrewsbury are to have you, because she is stuck with Dominic Grieve. Should Dominic Grieve be deselected from the Conservative Party if he votes against the government this week?
I think if the government, reports in the Sun newspaper state that Downing Street is going to be making this an issue of confidence in the government, and there is a very clear rule that if any Conservative Member of Parliament votes against Conservative policy on the motion of confidence in the government, then of course the whip is withdrawn. These people are going against their own associations, their own constituents who voted for Brexit, and appropriate disciplinary actions have to be taken. The other point, Nigel, is I am thrilled that that Boris Johnson is restoring cabinet collective responsibility. There is nothing more undermining and destabilising and worrying than a cabinet not being united and leaking all over the place and contradicting the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is exerting the appropriate level of authority over the Cabinet. The Cabinet has to be united and it has to follow a single policy, unlike what happened under Mrs. May. And lastly, what I'd like to say is this. I'm the first ever Polish-born British Member of Parliament. I'm very proud of that fact. We came to this country in 1978. Because my parents refused to live under communism. We now benefit from 1 million Poles living and working in the United Kingdom, and the contribution of Poles to this country is something that makes me
we're going to talk,
extraordinarily proud. But it had to be, Nigel, the United Kingdom that took on the European Union, because every time any other country, whether it's Denmark, France or Ireland, have had the temerity to take on the European Union, as you know, Nigel, they've been told to vote again until they've been crushed. And it had to be this country to have the courage, the integrity, the fortitude, and quite frankly, the balls to stand up to the European Commission. And if we back down now, Nigel, the Eurosceptic cause across the continent of Europe, including in Poland, will be set back by a generation.
Oh, and indeed, there are many here in America would feel the same way. In a moment, we're going to talk about the 1st of September 1939, but for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:47.
LBC.
If you're driving in London this summer, the last thing you need is getting hit by the ultra-low emission zone charge. So make sure you're driving a car that meets ULEZ guidelines. At Car Giant, we've thousands of ULEZ compliant cars in stock, including diesels, and all at incredibly low prices. Beat the charges now and when the zone expands in 2021. Giant choice, giant savings. Visit cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
I'm sorry, you have progressive memory loss.
When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication, as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss. But here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
Football is back on Sky Sports. With our total football offer, you get all our football for just £18 extra a month. Absolutely amazing! Sky Sports has more live games than ever before and more of the biggest fixtures. That means more passion, more drama, more glory. All for just £18 extra a month. And it's live! Search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports Football and Premier League, £18 a month for 18 months. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change during this period. Offer ends September 26th.
Stay up all night in New York. Live your best life in Miami. Or explore nature in Rio. Whichever type of holiday you're searching for, fly for less, stay for longer with Norwegian, the world's best low-cost long-haul airline. And with low fares to over 150 other destinations, the world has never been closer. Fancy a seat in our spacious premium cabin? Treat yourself for less than you might think. Start your journey at norwegian.com.
Bangers and mash, showers and power ballads, tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app with no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
Whoever they want to be in life, give them a great start with WellKid. Carefully balanced, great-tasting vitamins and minerals for 4 to 12-year-olds, with specific nutrients such as zinc and vitamin D, which support normal immune system function. The WellKid range from Vitabiotics, from Boots, pharmacies and Vitabiotics.com.
Love each corner, glide over cobbled lanes, sometimes get lost and even enjoy the traffic. The Renault Clio Play is designed for the city, with 16-inch alloy wheels and air conditioning as standard. Just $169 a month, no deposit, and 0% APR this September. Renault Clio Play, book your test drive today. Renault PCP Finance Clio Play TCE 90 48 months. Optional final payments £4,654. Subject to status, over 18s, T's and C's apply. Order and register by September 30th. Retail customers at participating dealers only.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, before the break, Daniel Kaczynski talked about Poles who'd come to Britain, his family included, and others, many others, since they joined the European Union. Sharon asks you, Daniel, please can you explain how an MP of Polish origin can now be against freedom of movement that would restrict other Polish people?
Well, first of all, I want a colourblind immigration policy. I want the most talented people, irrespective of where they come from in the world and their colour and their religion, to be able to be afforded to come and live and work in the United Kingdom based on their talents and their skills. At the moment, we have a very racist, I would say, a very racist immigration policy, whereby our fellow white Caucasians from Europe are given instantaneous access to our labour markets. So a low-skilled worker, let's say from the Czech Republic, can gain immediate access to work in the United Kingdom, but the highly skilled Bangladeshi technician or doctor has a much harder time of it. I want to get back to an immigration policy that treats everybody equally. And specifically, when we pull out of the European Union, we're not going to put barbed wire on the cliffs of Dover and sea mines in the English Channel. Of course, we are going to continue to welcome hard-working, highly skilled Polish workers into the United Kingdom, but it will be done on a managed and sustainable basis, and it will be done on the basis whereby we evaluate if a British company wants to recruit a Polish architect or banker or doctor or whatever it is, and they can convince the immigration department that that person is required to work, then of course a work permit will be issued.
Well,
but
Daniel,
it has to be
all-
sustainable.
That all makes sense to me. I've campaigned for that for years. Now, tell me, as a Polish born, how important in Poland is today the 80th anniversary of the German attacks?
Oh, huge. I tried to convince the Prime Minister to visit Warsaw today, along with Donald Trump and others. He wasn't able to do that, but he has filmed a very, for me, a very evocative and emotional message, which has been tweeted from Downing Street, about the extraordinary contribution of Poles to the Battle of Britain. The Polish 303 squadron shot down more enemy aircraft than any other squadron in the Battle of Britain. The Poles were instrumental at liberating Monte Cassino, which was the most impregnable part of the Gustav Line in Italy.
It was, yeah.
Polish soldiers, and I've been to the graves in Libya, Polish soldiers fought with the desert routes through Egypt and Libya and Tunisia, and of course were part of the landings in Arnhem, Operation Market Garden, and in other theatres of war. So, of course, we're extraordinarily proud about how we helped Britain during the war. But, Nigel, and this is the most important thing, and September the 1st, 1939, 80 years on, this is a very emotional day for me. I take delegations of British members of Parliament to Warsaw on a regular basis. I'm the chairman of the All-Party Group for Poland. And the first thing that we do, before they meet members of Parliament and senators and the media, is I take them to the Warsaw Uprising Museum. So they can see for themselves how, in 1944, Adolf Hitler instructed for the complete destruction of Warsaw, which was carpet-bombed. Millions of people were killed, cities were destroyed, and yet, Nigel, 80 years on, Germany refuses to pay Poland any compensation for damage, despite killing millions of Poles and destroying so many cities. And I must mention on this very somber day, Jan Kawczynski. He was the brother of my beloved grandfather. And he hid 8 Jewish families on his estate. Poland was the only country where there was the death penalty for hiding and helping Jewish people. So they knew the risks that they were taking. First of all, the Germans made him take off his officer's boots, then they made him dig a grave, then they made him watch as they shot his 12-year-old daughter, then they shot his wife, and then they shot him. Now, by that stage, I think he was looking forward to receiving the bullet, because, of course, when you've seen your daughter and wife shot, there is no alternative. And I have to say to you, I'm now in discussions with senior barristers about a private prosecution for my family, because I think we've got to take this challenge to Germany directly, and we've got to instigate. If the Polish government is reticent about going to an international court, then it has to be ordinary Poles who instigate private prosecutions against the German state. Still, 80 years on, Nigel, they refuse to take responsibility for the genocide that they brought about in Poland.
It was an incredibly powerful and sad, terribly sad story. But Daniel, wouldn't modern-day Germany argue that they're all now part of a European Union and friends together, and the whole point of it is to put these things behind us?
Well, of course, they would argue that they are friends together and it's all part of a very happy, homogenous unit. But in order to do that, and I've said this directly to the Germans themselves, in order to do that, they need to atone for the damage that they've done to Poland. The Polish government has estimated that 777 billion pounds is what would be required to pay for all the damage that was done to Poland during the Second World War. And you know what the Germans say, Nigel? They say, no, the Polish government entered into an agreement with us in 1952 that they didn't want war compensation. Well, of course, that wasn't the Polish government. That was Joseph Stalin, who controlled Poland at the time, and the communist government had no legitimacy whatsoever. Also, don't forget, Nigel, that the Germans are building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline at the moment, a direct gas and oil link directly to Russia, bypassing our key NATO partners in Central and Eastern Europe. What sort of message does that say, Nigel? We want you to be part of a single European family and project, but when it suits us, we are going to put you at risk from the Russians in order to guarantee our own gas supplies. That is hypocrisy, which I am campaigning against too.
And it's one of the reasons, of course, why we are getting Eurosceptic debate now happening in Poland and Hungary and the Czech Republic and many, many other parts of the European Union. Daniel, I want to say a huge thank you to you for coming in this morning, being so generous, taking all of our calls. And I'll finish on a message on Twitter, which says, I agree with Daniel 100%. Nigel, you've done well to get us to leave the EU, but it's now time to be pragmatic and go for the withdrawal agreement. Andy and Banstead, I will not be going for the withdrawal agreement, but I do hope Daniel, his leader Boris, take us towards a clean break Brexit on the 31st of October. I would celebrate. Tomorrow, I'm back in London with you at 6, this afternoon at 3 at Ian Payne, but up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, London Smithfield Market could face chaotic